Purchasing power refers to the quantity of goods and services that can be purchased with a unit of currency. It is an essential measure of economic well-being, as it directly impacts the ability of individuals and families to meet their needs and improve their quality of life. When purchasing power increases, consumers can afford more with the same amount of money, enhancing their standard of living. Conversely, when purchasing power declines, often due to inflation or rising costs, individuals find it more challenging to afford basic necessities and discretionary items. The concept of purchasing power extends beyond mere income levels. It is influenced by several factors, including inflation, cost of living, and economic policies. For working people, purchasing power is far more critical than nominal income or GDP, because it determines their actual economic capacity. While a high nominal income might seem advantageous, if it is accompanied by exorbitant living costs, real purchasing power can be low. Similarly, a growing nominal GDP does not guarantee improved living standards for the population at large, as economic benefits may be unequally distributed. The past 40 years have seen a remarkable divergence in the purchasing power trajectories of the United States and China. While China has experienced unprecedented growth in purchasing power, the United States has seen stagnation and even decline for many of its citizens. China's rise in purchasing power. In 1980, China's economy was largely agrarian, and the average citizen's purchasing power was extremely limited. According to World Bank data, China's GDP per capita in purchasing power parity, PPP terms, was approximately 1,527 in 1980. At that time, China's economic policies were transitioning from a centralized, planned economy to a more market-oriented system under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping. This shift paved the way for rapid industrialization, urbanization, and economic growth. By 2020, China's GDP per capita in PPP terms had risen to $16,804, representing a more than tenfold increase over 4 decades. This growth has translated into substantial improvements in the purchasing power of the average Chinese citizen. Wages have increased, and the cost of many essential goods and services has remained relatively low compared to Western nations, enabling Chinese consumers to afford more with their earnings. Additionally, the Chinese government's investments in infrastructure, education, and social programs have further enhanced the purchasing power of its population. The rise in China's purchasing power has been accompanied by a growing middle class. According to McKinsey & Company, China's middle class has expanded from fewer than 10 million people in 2000 to over 400 million in 2020. This burgeoning middle class has driven consumer demand for a wide range of goods and services, from housing and education to luxury items and international travel. The increase in purchasing power has not only improved living standards, but also contributed to China's economic resilience and global influence. Stagnation and decline in purchasing power of American citizens. In contrast to China's upward trajectory, the United States has experienced stagnation and decline in purchasing power for large segments of its population. In the 1980s, the US was the world's largest and most dynamic economy, with a high standard of living and robust wage growth. However, over the past 40 years, real wage growth has slowed significantly, and the cost of essential goods and services has risen faster than incomes. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, real median household income in the US, adjusted for inflation, grew by only 8% between 1980 and 2020. During the same period, the costs of housing, healthcare, and education skyrocketed. For example, the average cost of a 4-year college education increased by over 260% from 1980 to 2020, while healthcare expenditures per capita nearly tripled. These rising costs have eroded the purchasing power of American workers, making it increasingly difficult for them to achieve financial security and upward mobility. One striking example of declining purchasing power is housing affordability. In 1980, the median price of a home in the US was approximately 3 times the median household income. By 2020, this ratio had increased to over 5 times the median income, reflecting the growing disparity between wages and housing costs. Similarly, healthcare spending as a percentage of GDP rose from 8.9% in 1980 to 18% in 2020, placing a significant financial burden on households. The importance of purchasing power over nominal GDP. For working people, purchasing power is a far more relevant and meaningful measure of economic well-being than nominal GDP. While nominal GDP measures the total value of goods and services produced within a country, it does not account for how this economic output is distributed or how it translates into improved living standards for the average citizen. A high or growing nominal GDP can create the illusion of prosperity, but it may mask underlying inequalities and inefficiencies in the economy. The misleading nature of nominal GDP. Nominal GDP is often celebrated as a measure of economic strength, but it has significant limitations. First, it does not adjust for inflation, which can distort the true value of economic output. Second, it does not account for differences in cost of living, making international comparisons unreliable. Most importantly, nominal GDP provides no insight into how economic gains are distributed among the population. In highly unequal economies, GDP growth may disproportionately benefit a small elite, leaving the majority of the population without meaningful improvements in their standard of living. This has been the case in the United States, where GDP has grown steadily over the past 40 years, but the benefits of this growth have been concentrated at the top. According to a report by the Economic Policy Institute, the top 1% of earners in the US saw their incomes grow by over 160% between 1979 and 2019, while the bottom 90% experienced income growth of only 26%. This concentration of economic gains among a small segment of the population has contributed to rising income inequality and a sense of economic insecurity for many Americans. Despite living in the world's largest economy, millions of Americans struggle to afford basic necessities such as housing, healthcare, and education. This disconnect between nominal GDP growth and individual well-being underscores the importance of focusing on purchasing power as a measure of economic health. Purchasing power as the true measure of well-being. Unlike nominal GDP, purchasing power directly reflects the economic realities faced by working individuals. It captures the relationship between income and the cost of living, providing a clearer picture of how much individuals can afford with their earnings. For policymakers, prioritizing purchasing power means focusing on measures that improve real wages, reduce inflation, and address the rising costs of essential goods and services. Countries that prioritize purchasing power over nominal GDP often achieve better outcomes in terms of social and economic well-being. For example, Scandinavian countries such as Sweden and Denmark have lower nominal GDPs than the United States, but their citizens enjoy higher levels of purchasing power due to equitable income distribution, affordable healthcare, and strong social safety nets. These policies ensure that economic growth benefits the majority of the population rather than a select few. The American perception of economic decline. The disconnect between nominal GDP growth and purchasing power helps explain why many Americans feel their financial situation has deteriorated, despite living in one of the world's wealthiest nations. Surveys consistently show that a majority of Americans believe their standard of living has stagnated or declined over the past few decades. According to a Pew Research Center study, 60% of Americans in 2021 reported that they were struggling to maintain their standard of living, citing rising costs and stagnant wages as major challenges. This perception is supported by data showing that essential expenses such as housing, healthcare, and education have consumed an increasing share of household income. For example, a 2020 report from the Federal Reserve found that nearly 40% of American adults would struggle to cover a $400 emergency expense, highlighting the precarious financial situation faced by many households. These financial pressures have led to widespread frustration and dissatisfaction with the current economic system. Lessons from China's success in enhancing purchasing power. China's experience over the past 40 years offers valuable lessons on how to improve purchasing power and ensure that economic growth benefits the majority of the population. Key factors contributing to China's success include investment in infrastructure. Massive investments in infrastructure have reduced transportation and energy costs, making goods and services more affordable for consumers. 2. Support for small businesses. Policies that promote entrepreneurship and small business development have created jobs and increased incomes. 3. Focus on education and training. Government initiatives to improve education and workforce training have enhanced productivity and raised wages. 4. Price controls. In some sectors, the Chinese government has implemented price controls to keep essential goods affordable. These policies have enabled China to achieve rapid economic growth while also improving the purchasing power of its citizens. While challenges remain, China's emphasis on inclusive growth provides a model for other nations seeking to enhance economic well-being. The case for prioritizing purchasing power. Purchasing power is the most important measure of economic well-being for working people, as it directly determines their ability to afford goods and services. While nominal GDP is a useful indicator of overall economic activity, it can be misleading when used as a proxy for individual prosperity. The experiences of the United States and China over the past 40 years highlight the importance of focusing on policies that enhance purchasing power, such as addressing income inequality, reducing living costs, and ensuring equitable access to economic opportunities. For policymakers, shifting the focus from nominal GDP to purchasing power will require a fundamental rethinking of economic priorities. By prioritizing the economic well-being of the majority, governments can create more inclusive and sustainable growth, ensuring that prosperity is shared by all.
Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. It's one of the best ways to help more people see this content. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment below and join the conversation about today's topic. Your engagement and support mean everything to me and make it possible for me to create more impactful content that aims to bring the world closer together. If you'd like to take it a step further, you can support the channel directly through the link in the description. Every bit of support helps this community grow and fuels the mission to make a difference. Thank you for being such an important part of this journey.